Hello friends and welcome back to Generation Pixel, and if you're new to the channel, well, you're probably in for a treat because you see this is going to be a whole new series that I'll be doing because I was talking to the Retro Bear at the weekend and we got talking about a game that probably wouldn't be made these days because, well, people are too afraid to offend people and people are too afraid of lawsuits. And maybe rightly so, but it was nice to see a certain type of game back in the day that, well, just didn't care what people thought about it. And I'm going to be doing one of those games today. We're going to be talking about the first one in the Too Hot for YouTube series, and that is Rockstar Ate My Hamster. So, if you want to see what all the fuss about this game is, and, well, there was some fuss back in the day, then just wait until after the titles. Now, although this game is just mildly humorous, it can get close to the knuckle at times, so I'm warning you up front because you see, as part of the Cecil Pitt theatrical agency who's just about going bust, he's received a £50,000 inheritance from his Auntie Mabel, and of course his little sidekick decides, let's get into rock music. So at the very start you decide how many rock stars you want in your band, and well, it's a simple case of picking 1 to 4. After that, you then have to go to the viewing room and decide, well, which rock stars you want. Now, as you can see from this selection of rock stars, well, they're all 80s pop and rock icons, but, you know, with just a little bit of tweak, like Wacko Jacko and Tina Turnoff. And let me tell you, the list goes on and on. There's quite a host of stars from the 80s that have the absolute Michael ripped out of them in this game. And as I said in the introduction, well, these days you would probably have rock stars and pop stars coming down with lawsuits faster than you could blink. So this is definitely a product of the 80s where games developers, well, they didn't care quite as much and they probably weren't quite as afraid that someone would come down with a massive lawsuit on their head. So of course the first thing you have to do is pick your band, and I've selected Bimbo Baggins, maybe Kylie Minogue, maybe not. I also picked Lumi, or could be Lemmy, but you know what, I don't want to mess with that guy regardless of where he is just now. And lastly, Rick Ghastly. Well, everybody needs a good Rick roll now and again, and that was the band. So I picked 3 members for the band because I went for a 3-act band, and then you move straight into your office and you start getting to work. Now the first thing you've got to do obviously is name your band. Now your little sidekick there, he'll happily suggest something for you, but you can just say, no, I don't want to go your way, it's far too tame, and I'll decide what my own band is going to be called, and it's all just type it in because the ZX Spectrum, well, it was a microcomputer. It had a keyboard, so the limit was your imagination. And I thought for today's gameplay, well, there was no more fitting name than, well, YouTube algorithm, because let's face it, that's what we're all aiming to crack anyway. So you've got the band and you've got the name, and now you've got to decide on the equipment, and you can choose between spanking new, second hand or dodgy gear. Now this is completely up to yourself, it just depends how much money you want to have in the bank, because obviously you're going to have wages to pay, so you need to make sure you can afford the band you've got, and the less you spend on the equipment, well, you might not get the best results, but you might be able to stay in a few weeks longer without going bankrupt because you've spent all your money on gear. But again, it's totally up to yourself. Now with your band and the gear in place, it's pretty much up to you. There are several options that you've got in front of you. You can practice, you can look for publicity, you can gig, you can even give your band members gifts if you so desire. But what of course you really need to be doing at the beginning, well, you've got to gig, and there's several options for gigs because there's different sizes of venue, and of course there's different ticket prices, and this is all for you to work out what is going to get the best results for your band while you're gigging. And it really is just trial and error at this stage, because what you'll do is you'll pick the venue, pick the price, and hopefully you'll get the best return. Now you get the option of how many days you're going to gig, and that's quite useful because what you want to do is you want to select a few amount of days so you can see just how much revenue that ticket price at that venue is bringing in, so you can experiment as you go along, because you will need to make money in this game and you'll need to make it as quickly as possible. Now after practicing with your band a few times and gigging a few times, someone will ring your office and offer you a record deal. Now you get several of these so you don't have to pick the first one, but soon as you pick a record deal, well, you can record an album, and when you record an album, that's correct, you can name that album and name each and every single track on that album, which is again where it can get a little bit racy if you choose, because it's all down to you. Now for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to go over the top. What I'm going to do is put a few slightly amusing titles into my album, and of course have a self-titled album, YouTube Algorithm by YouTube Algorithm. Now once of course you've recorded this album, well now you have the option to release either singles or the album itself. And that's where of course we reach the main point of the game, and that's to release successful singles and successful albums and get those platinum discs coming in. Now you can see the red icons at the bottom left of the game screen, well that's platinum discs that you're trying to achieve. And of course when you do achieve them, they will change from red to a lovely platinum colour, and you know you've hit that mark. Now the naughtiness of this game is not just down to you. When you hit things like publicity, the game can throw you a curveball. So look away now, because aliens stole my hamster, and definitely don't look to the right. Come on, I said don't look to the right. And yes, I'm talking directly to you, Geordie Slasher Gaming. And if you think a page 3 girl's bad, check out Clive's comment here. Yeah, this game was definitely pushing the boundaries even in the 80s. So as I've already went over, what you have to do is you have to practice, you have to gig, you have to make money, you have to record an album, release the singles, and hopefully get onto the charts. And again, the charts can be quite interesting because it draws again from a lot of 80s pop culture figures. And when you get to the charts, that's when you really have to put the work in. You're going to have to gig all the time and get your numbers up as high as possible, and of course you're going to have to try and rely on some publicity. Now we've seen earlier on what the publicity can do for you, but it can get much worse than that. For example, you might end up with a big fine, or if things get really bad, then well, this happens. Poor old Rick has rolled his last. Keep on grinding, putting in the work, then eventually something magical will happen. That's right, Geb's Got Legs got to number 9. You're in the charts and you're starting to make some headway into what the game's actually about. Now you can also get sponsorships such as Budweiser beer, but of course this can also be a pitfall, as one of the publicity stunts will announce that Budweiser beer is addictive and your sales drop again. But if you don't gig and you don't seek publicity, well you're going to get nowhere in the charts. And that's just what you have to overcome when you're playing this game. So there you have it, Rockstar Ate My Hamster in a nutshell. Now the question you have to answer, are you man enough or woman enough to play this game, and was it just too hot for YouTube? Because let's face it, there was a lot going on in this game, especially for the 80s, a lot of slight rudeness, and of course when you added in your own element, well, it could get exceptionally rude. I mean, I toned it down for this video because, well, I want people to watch it and not feel too offended. But I don't know, I think every now and again a little bit of offence can well brighten up your day just slightly. So there you have it, my friends, a Rockstar Ate My Hamster, and yes, it was based on the news headline from the 80s, Freddie Star Ate My Hamster, which I don't know whether that actually happened or not, and you would have to research it yourself, but that's beside the point. You got to see the game, a game that probably wouldn't be made these days because, well, let's face it, the pop acts would just sue the pants off the developers who put anything like that out. But back in the 80s, well, they were brave enough to say, let's have a go at that. And you know what, maybe back in the 80s the pop stars thought, you know what, this is a bit of fun. But that's for everyone else to decide. Now if you've enjoyed this video, please throw me a thumbs up, but more importantly, tell me why you enjoyed it, and if you didn't like the video, well, feel free to throw me a thumbs down and tell me why you didn't like it. And of course, as always, if you want to see more, well, the subscription button is always there for you, and it's always free, and you can change your mind if you feel like it too. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the first in the series of Too Hot for YouTube, and until next time, cheerio!